My name is Brooke Lawson. I am 30 years old. 4 years ago, I discovered that my boss had buried the construction company I helped build for 9 years under $1,400,000 of hidden debt from bad investments while I handled everything unpaid. But right now, in this tense Reno settlement meeting, his lawyer leaned in and whispered 5 words that made my boss's face go completely white, his hands trembling on the papers he was eager to have me sign. For the first time in months, I smiled, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. If you're already hooked on this, please hit like and drop in the comments whether you've ever had a boss try to push you out after you built their whole world. I read every comment and it helps more than you know. I met my boss, Richard Harlan, when I was 21, fresh out of community college and desperate for steady work in Reno's growing development scene. He ran a small construction firm focused on custom homes and commercial builds, and he liked how organized I was during my interview. Within months, I moved from basic admin to handling client coordination scheduling, and eventually the books because no one else could keep the details straight. My boss saw the value immediately, and by the time I turned 25, he asked me to come on full time as operations manager. He said the company needed someone he could trust completely and that I was family now. I believed him. I poured 9 years into that place while he took the public credit, the awards, and the big client handshakes. For 6 of those years, the firm looked successful on the surface. We landed solid contracts, my boss drove a new truck every couple of years, and he talked constantly about expanding into larger commercial projects. I managed the back end, the payroll, the vendor relationships, and the endless paperwork that kept everything running. I never complained about the long hours or the fact that my salary stayed modest because I thought we were building something real together. Then 4 years ago, everything changed. I was staying late one night reconciling accounts like I did every quarter when I spotted a transfer that didn't match any project. One led to another, and suddenly I was staring at a pattern of loans I had never seen approved. The office building we owned had 3 separate mortgages totaling $900,000. Equipment financing sat at $250,000. Lines of credit were maxed, and there were vendor debts plus back taxes I had never been told about. The total picture came to $1,400,000 in liabilities, while the actual asset value hovered around $1,100,000. We were underwater, and my boss had been hiding it for years through creative accounting and personal withdrawals I traced to gambling losses, crypto bets, and an apartment he kept for private use. I sat there in the empty office at 2 in the morning, surrounded by printouts, and felt the floor drop out. My first instinct was to confront him, but I knew my boss too well. He would twist it, blame market conditions, or say I misunderstood, and then he would find a way to push me out before I could protect myself. So I didn't say a word. Instead, I started documenting everything quietly. I made copies of every loan statement, every suspicious transfer, and every email that showed he had signed off a loan. I saved it all on an encrypted drive and kept physical sets at my sister's house across town. My sister Claire Bennett had always told me to have my own exit plan, and for once, I listened completely. I also protected what little I had built separately. Over the years, I had earned some performance bonuses that my boss never commingled with company funds. I rolled them into a separate retirement account and worked with a financial advisor to place them in an irrevocable trust structure that named only me as beneficiary. It wasn't huge, but it was mine, roughly $480,000 that no court or company claim could touch. I kept doing my job, smiling at meetings and pretending the firm was thriving, while my boss dug the hole deeper. He brought in a younger project coordinator named Kayla Thornton last year and started giving her more visible roles while I handled the mess behind the scenes. He even started staying late with her in ways that made the office gossip start. My loyal coworker Taylor Brooks noticed the shift first. Taylor had been with the firm almost as long as I had, and she pulled me aside one afternoon in the break room. "Brooks, something feels off with the way he's treating you lately," she said quietly. "You built this place. Don't let him rewrite history." I thanked her but kept my secret close. I couldn't risk anyone tipping my boss off. Meanwhile, key client Megan Torres, one of our biggest repeat builders for custom homes, started asking me directly if everything was okay with the company finances. She had overheard my boss brushing off a payment delay, and it raised red flags for her. I reassured her publicly, but privately, I knew the walls were closing in. 2 months ago, my boss called me into his office and closed the door. He looked relaxed, like he was about to deliver good news. Brooke, the firm needs to restructure, he said with that smooth tone he used on clients. We're bringing in fresh energy, and I think it's time for you to step back. I'll offer you a fair severance, 6 months' pay, and we can part ways cleanly. Just sign the agreement and everyone wins. 6 months' pay after 9 years. No mention of the equity discussions we had years earlier or the bonuses he had promised but never delivered. I felt the knife, but I kept my face neutral. I'll think about it, I told him. Inside, I was already 3 steps ahead. He didn't like the hesitation. Over the next weeks, the pressure turned private and relentless. He started excluding me from client meetings, handing those to Kayla instead. He had HR Director Vanessa Reed schedule a performance review that conveniently highlighted minor issues I had never heard about before. My boss even cornered me in the hallway one evening after everyone else had left. "You've been here a long time, Brooke," he said, his voice low and edged with warning. "Don't make this difficult. Sign the papers and walk away with something. Fight me, and I'll make sure the whole industry knows you couldn't keep up." The threat hung there like a blade. I nodded like I was considering it, but I had already called my own lawyer, Nicole Hayes, the next morning. Nicole reviewed the situation and confirmed what I already knew. "You have a strong case for more if you want to fight," she said during our first meeting, "but if your goal is to walk clean and let him inherit the mess, you've documented everything perfectly." I told her exactly what I wanted. I would appear defeated, agree to minimal terms, and make sure the settlement agreement included a full liability disclosure addendum. My boss would get the company the office, the equipment, and every single debt attached. I would get my small severance, my protected trust untouched, and the freedom to start over. Nicole smiled the same dangerous smile my old contacts used to give when they saw a loophole. "This is going to be beautiful," she said. The coercion escalated in the days leading to the settlement meeting. My boss sent texts at odd hours reminding me how generous he was being. He had CFO Derek Lang run numbers that conveniently showed the company barely breaking, even which I knew was a lie because I had the real books. Rival colleague Justin Hale, who had always sided with my boss, started spreading quiet rumors that I had been difficult to work with lately. Even my mentor, Ryan Fletcher, an older executive who had watched me grow, pulled me aside and said my boss was making noises about blackballing me if I pushed back. Through it all, I played the part of the tired, loyal employee who just wanted to move on quietly. Taylor kept texting me encouragement from her desk. "Stay strong, we all see what he's doing." Megan Torres even reached out privately to say she would follow me to whatever I did next. Yesterday, my boss called me into the conference room for the final walkthrough before today's meeting. He slid the draft agreement across the table and leaned back with that familiar smug expression. "This is more than fair, Brooke. Sign it and we both get what we want. You get to rest, and I get to take the company into the next phase." His voice dripped with false kindness, but the threat from our hallway conversation still echoed. I picked up the papers and pretended to read them carefully while my stomach tightened. I knew the addendum was buried in the back, the one that listed every liability in plain language. I knew he hadn't read it. He never read the fine print when he thought he was winning. This morning we walked into the law firm conference room together. My boss looked confident in his best suit. Philip Grant, his lawyer, sat on one side while Nicole sat beside me. Vanessa Reed from HR was there as a witness, and Derek Lang hovered near the door looking uncomfortable. My boss pushed the final stack of documents toward me across the polished table. "Let's get this done," he said. Philip started flipping pages, reviewing the asset transfer section. Then he reached the liability disclosure addendum. I watched his expression change the exact moment he realized what my boss was actually signing for. Philip leaned in close and whispered those 5 words I'd been waiting 4 years to hear land. My boss's face went completely white. His hands started trembling. The papers shook. He looked at me across the table for the first time with something other than control in his eyes. Pure shock mixed with the beginning of understanding. I kept my face calm, but inside the years of patience finally clicked into place. Philip cleared his throat and spoke louder so the whole room could hear. "Richard Harlan, you are assuming personal liability for every single debt attached to these assets. $1,400,000 total. The mortgages, the equipment loans, the vendor obligations, the back taxes. All of it transfers to you alone." My boss shot up from his chair so fast it toppled backward and crashed against the wall. "This is a setup," he barked, his voice cracking with raw fury. She hid every number she doctored the books for years, and now she's trying to bury me. I refuse to sign another page until we rip this addendum out. Nicole didn't even blink. She leaned forward with that razor-sharp smile. Mr. Harlan, your client reviewed the full packet 4 separate times in the last 2 weeks. He initialed every section himself. We have timestamps and email confirmations. You cannot unwind this now. My boss spun toward her, his eyes blazing. You think this makes you clever, Brooke? After 9 years of me carrying this company, you pull a knife like this? I made you. Without me, you would still be filing papers in some dead-end office. The words landed like punches, but I had practiced for this moment in my head 1,000 times. I met his stare and said nothing. Let him fill the silence with his own panic. Vanessa shifted in her seat and stared down at her notepad like it suddenly held the meaning of life. Derek looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet. He had known pieces of the mess, but never the full picture, and now it was exploding in front of witnesses. My boss turned on Philip next. Fix this right now. Call the mediator, call whoever you have to. Tell them she tricked me into signing without full disclosure. Philip's face stayed stone calm, but his voice carried the weight of 30 years in corporate law. I advised you twice in writing to order an independent audit. You refused both times and signed the waiver. The agreement stands, Richard. Legally, it is ironclad. I watched my boss's mind race, trying to find any exit ramp. For a second, he looked almost small, the man who had once swaggered through job sites barking orders at crews twice his age. He slammed a fist on the table hard enough to make the water glasses jump. I built this firm from nothing. 9 years of my vision, my risk. She was just the help, the books girl, and now she thinks she can walk away clean while I drown. Nicole cut in again. Her tone ice cold, the help who documented every unauthorized withdrawal, every personal expense funneled through company accounts. The help who protected her separate retirement account that you never touched. The help who is now walking out of here with $480,000 safe in trust, and you, Mr. Harlan, inherit the hole you dug. My boss's head snapped toward me again. You owe me, Brooke. You owe this company. After everything I gave you, the promotions, the flexibility. Sign a new version today, or I swear I will call every contractor in Reno and make sure they know exactly what kind of employee you really are. The threat hung there thick and vicious, but it was too late. Philip slid the final signature page across to him and said quietly, You can sign and end this, or we can let the courts decide. Either way, the liability disclosure is already executed. My boss stared at the paper like it was poisoned. His hand hovered, then dropped. He signed with a jagged, angry scrawl that tore the page slightly. The sound of the pen scratching was the sweetest thing I had heard in years. Nicole slid the executed copies into her folder and stood. Congratulations, Mr. Harlan. The company, the office, the equipment, and every debt are now yours alone. Ms. Lawson receives her 6-month severance and full release. This settlement is final. My boss stayed seated, breathing hard like he had just run 10 miles uphill. He looked at me one last time, and the mask of the confident boss was gone. What remained was pure disbelief mixed with something darker. This isn't over, he muttered under his breath, but loud enough for everyone to hear. You think you won, but you just burned every bridge in this town. I walked out of that conference room into the bright Reno afternoon with my head high and my pulse hammering. Nicole walked beside me and squeezed my shoulder once. You played it perfectly, Brooke. He never saw it coming. I thanked her and got into my car before the adrenaline crash hit. My phone buzzed almost immediately. It was Taylor. Her text read, He just stormed in here screaming your name. The whole team heard him say you sabotaged everything. What the hell happened in that meeting? I typed back a short reply telling her the agreement was done and I would explain later. Before I could even pull out of the parking lot, another message came through, this one from Megan Torres. Just heard rumors flying already. If you need work or a reference, I'm your first call. You built that place, Brooke. Don't let him rewrite it. I drove home to my quiet apartment on the edge of town, the one I had quietly leased 2 months earlier just in case. The 6-month severance would cover the gap while I figured out my next move, but the trust money stayed locked away untouched exactly as planned. For the first time in 9 years, I felt the weight of the company lift off my shoulders. No more late nights reconciling lies. No more pretending the numbers added up. I poured a glass of water and sat at my kitchen table replaying the moment my boss's face had gone white. It should have felt like victory. Instead, a small knot of unease settled in my stomach. I had won the settlement, but I knew men like my boss did not go quietly into bankruptcy. That knot tightened the next morning. I woke to 27 missed calls and a string of texts from unknown numbers. Construction vendors I had worked with for years were suddenly demanding immediate payment on old invoices, claiming my boss had told them I was the one who authorized the delays. Justin Hale posted a vague LinkedIn update about toxic employees who destroy companies from within. The comments were already piling up with people tagging me. I scrolled through them, my coffee going cold in my hand. One line stood out from a former vendor. Brooke Lawson was the real problem. Glad she's finally gone. My boss had wasted no time starting the smear campaign. Taylor called me at 8:30, her voice breathless. He's in full meltdown mode, Brooke. Kayla Thornton packed her desk an hour ago and said she didn't sign up for this kind of drama. Derek Lang is on the phone with the bank right now trying to explain the sudden debt load. Vanessa Reed told me off the record that HR is getting calls from clients asking if the company is stable. I thanked her for the heads up and hung up before my voice could crack. I had expected some blowback, but not this fast. The industry was smaller than people thought, and my boss knew exactly which buttons to push. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again, this time with Ryan Fletcher, my old mentor, on the line. His tone was careful, almost apologetic. Brooke, I just got off the phone with my boss. He's telling everyone you hid the financial problems for years and that the settlement was your idea of revenge. I don't know what to believe anymore, but some of the bigger contractors are already pulling bids. If this keeps up, the whole firm could fold in weeks. I explained the truth in calm, measured sentences: the hidden loans, the gambling losses, the apartment he kept on the side. Ryan listened, but I could hear the hesitation in his silence. I always thought you were the steady one, he said finally. But if even half of what he's saying sticks, your name is going to be poison in Reno construction for a long time. He wished me luck and hung up. The call left me staring at the wall, wondering how many more bridges were burning right now. By evening, the texts from my boss started. First one was short and vicious. You think 6 months' pay makes you even enjoy looking over your shoulder. The second came 20 minutes later. Kayla already quit. Clients are fleeing. Hope your little trust fund was worth destroying everything we built. I blocked the number, but the damage was already spreading. Megan Torres left me another voicemail, this one sounding worried. I'm still in your corner, but I have to be careful. 2 other builders just asked me if you were the reason for the sudden cash crunch. Call me when you can. I saved the message and felt the first real sting of what partial victory actually cost. I had walked away clean on paper, but the reputation I had spent 9 years earning was now in free fall, and my boss still had enough friends in high places to keep the fire burning. I sat on my couch that night with the television off and the room quiet. The settlement papers sat on the coffee table, signed and final. I had the freedom I wanted, but the industry that had been my whole world for over a decade was already closing its doors. Taylor sent one last text before midnight. He's meeting with bankruptcy lawyers tomorrow, but he's also meeting with a PR firm. This isn't ending quietly, Brooke. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I had planned for the financial collapse. I had not planned for how completely he would try to take my name down with him. The next morning brought the final gut punch of that week. My phone lit up with a news alert from a local construction blog. The headline read, "Longtime operations manager exits Reno firm amid financial turmoil." The article quoted an anonymous source close to the company, claiming I had mismanaged accounts for years. I knew exactly who that source was. My boss was not going bankrupt alone. He was making sure I burned right beside him in the court of public opinion. By noon, the story had spread to 2 more industry sites. Comments flooded in, calling me everything from incompetent to vindictive. One former vendor I had worked with for 8 years wrote that I must have known about the debts the whole time and chose to stay silent for my own gain. The words stung because they twisted the truth I had protected for 4 years into something ugly. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the screen while my coffee went cold. My boss had turned the narrative so fast, it felt like a second settlement hearing I had never agreed to attend. The irreversible loss hit hardest 3 days later. I drove to a job interview at a respected general contractor across town, the kind of place that would have welcomed me with open arms 6 months earlier. The hiring manager, a woman I had met at 3 different industry events, shook my hand, then slid a printed copy of the blog article across the desk. "We saw this, Brooke. We need someone we can trust completely with the books. Can you explain your side?" I laid out the facts calmly: the hidden loans, the personal withdrawals, the 4 years of quiet documentation. She listened, but her eyes stayed guarded. "I believe you, but perception matters here. We can't risk the association right now." I walked out with a polite rejection and the sinking feeling that every door in Reno construction had just slammed shut. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it until I saw the preview. "Enjoy your freedom, Brooke. The firm is gone. My name is Mud, but yours is worse. Hope the trust fund keeps you warm at night." It was my boss. I blocked the number immediately, but the message stayed burned in my mind. He had lost everything: the office, the equipment, the future he bragged about. Yet he still found the energy to make sure I paid extra. Taylor texted me an hour later with more bad news. "Derek Lang just quit. Vanessa Reed is updating resumes. Justin Hale is already bad-mouthing you on a group chat for local suppliers. This is getting ugly fast." I spent the next 2 weeks applying to every construction-related job I could find, from project coordination to consulting gigs. Rejections came back, polite but consistent. One even cited recent industry concerns without naming the articles. My mentor, Ryan Fletcher, called once more, his voice heavy. "I tried talking to a few people on your behalf, but the story has legs now. You might need to pivot entirely, Brooke. Maybe commercial real estate in a different city or something outside the trades." The words landed like a final verdict. I had won the legal battle. My boss had inherited the $1,400,000 in liabilities exactly as planned. But the professional life I loved in the city I had called home for 9 years was gone. The partial victory tasted bittersweet on the day I finally made my decision. I sat with Taylor over coffee at a quiet diner on the edge of town. She had just given her own notice and was looking at opportunities in Portland. "You did the right thing, Brooke. He would have thrown you under the bus eventually. But damn the cost." I nodded and told her I was using part of my protected trust to start a small freelance operations consulting business focused on helping small builders outside Nevada. No more corporate loyalty, no more unpaid everything. Megan Torres wired me a small starter contract the next week as a show of quiet support, but she made it clear it would be remote only. The industry had marked me, and the mark would not fade quickly in Reno. 2 months after the settlement, my boss's bankruptcy became public record. The local news ran a short piece noting the firm's sudden collapse and the personal guarantees he had signed. No one mentioned the 4 years I had carried the secret, or the way he had demanded every asset without reading the fine print. I read the article once, then closed the tab for good. I had the freedom I fought for. I had my $480,000 safe. I had the satisfaction of watching the house of cards he built finally fall. But I also had a reputation that would follow me in this town forever, and a career I had to rebuild from scratch in a new direction. I packed the last box from my apartment the following weekend and looked around the quiet space one final time. The sage green kitchen I had painted myself felt like a small symbol of new beginnings. My boss had taken the empire he thought he deserved. I had taken my peace, even if it came with scars. Sometimes winning means walking away with less than you hoped, but more than you had when the fight started. I closed the door behind me and drove toward the next chapter, knowing the cost had been high, but the alternative would have been staying trapped in his sinking ship. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. It still stings to remember how quickly everything shifted after that settlement room, but telling it out loud feels like the last piece of closure I needed. If you've ever had a boss try to rewrite your entire history after you carried them for years, drop a comment below and tell me what you did to protect yourself. I read every single one.